Hey Z-Coders, Peter Parker here, and I've got an amazing video for you. I'm going to show you how I've gone from a complete beginner to a seasoned bettor without a single losing month, all through the art of money management, the second most important aspect of sports betting.
Money management consists of a number of different facets, and here are a few of them. There is actually placing the wager itself. There is the bankroll management of that, is your cash flow, whether it's taking money out or putting money back into the bankroll, cash flow management. We've got loss adjustment and loss management. We've then got the system management itself. So if you're following a system, what management are they giving you to follow that particular system? And bear in mind that you could be following a number of different systems. The psychology of it, from being disciplined to looking at the wall and you're always missing that winning pick and you're bouncing around from system to system. We've then got targets, having specific, measurable, attainable, relevant and time-bound targets, short and long term. And then we've got distractions, when you're seeing the fix, the Monday night fix or the Wednesday night fix that you're dying to load up all your money on. All of these things need managing in a proficient and efficient way. Now I'm going to look at two core elements, and we're going to focus on one of those elements, which is loss recovery. But let's clarify that they are very distinct. So we'll look at the first one, which is placing the bets and what you need to know, and I'll do another video on this subject on its own. But let's just look at some of the factors that you need to be aware of. How much do you want to make, whether it be daily or monthly or yearly? What are the average odds of your system or systems? It could be your system yourself, or you could be following someone else's picks. How much do you need to risk to achieve your goal? Have you got that planned out based on the information that we've just looked at? You know, how much do you want to make, and what are the system's odds? You should know this. How many losses can your bankroll sustain? Then we can look at subsets of this. Is, are you betting to win a certain percentage? So are you having fluctuating bets to win a fixed amount? Do you have a fixed bet size that you place on each system or throughout the day? Or do you profit stack? Do you take the profits from one bet and place it on the next one, so you're progressively increasing the bet size? What are the average number of plays your system provides? What are the average win rates and win streaks that your system has? You need to ascertain whether you like a pick of the day where you predominantly put most of your bet, your bankroll, your day's bankroll on one pick of the day, or do you like to multi-bet? And if you like to multi-bet, then you need to understand how to manage that. Do you like to follow multi-systems? So does your system multi-bet, or do you just like lots of picks of the days, or do you have a combination of the both? Does your system suggest a paroli profit method? And this is where you have a laid out cash management system, and you incrementally create it into sets and profile to increase your bankroll, let's say over 30 or 90 days as an example. And do you have a stop loss in place? When you get to a bad day, do you know when to cut that off? Do you have a marker that says, right, enough is enough? So then there's the other side. It's actually loss management. It's completely separate to what you're doing when you're placing a bet. So let's look at what we're going to do when we have a loss. You can do nothing. You can just carry on with your current system where you're placing bets, or you can pro bet. So this is where you see it's an ABC bet. You're doubling up the previous day's loss, and if it loses again, you're doubling it again, and on the third go, you're hoping that you get the winning to recover all your losses. It's very aggressive, and in reality, you should be going to a D bet. And if you haven't got the courage, or the kahunas as I like to say, and you haven't got the bankroll to do a D bet, don't bother. It also puts on an immense amount of pressure on the capper itself, particularly if the capper cares whether you're at the C bet or D bet. It's different if you have sets. If you have sets split down, your actual ABC bets are spread, the risk is spread over a number of different sets. And then we utilize soft progression, and I have created a soft progression system that allows us to recover it quite simply and a lot less stressful. So let me just demonstrate why placing bets and a system to place bets is completely different to loss recovery. So we'll have a quick look at a couple of systems that are used by bettors all the time. Profit stacking. This is where we take the bet and then the winnings of that bet and place it all on the next day's bet. So it's a front-loaded progression system. So in progression or aggressive progression, you're taking the losses and putting it on the next day's bet. In this instance, we're taking the profit and putting it on the next day's bet. Now, you typically cap yourself out into sets so that the exposure doesn't get too big, but you can see here the exposure is increasing on some of those days. You are putting on quite a large bet. So on some of those days, you could have a big loss. Now, let's throw in a loss on the system just to see the numbers. You can see here on this particular profit stack system, we've got some big wins and we've got $1,000, but let's put a loss in and it's immediately jumped down because it's all adjusted based on the units. Another loss dropped it down again. Let's reset it. I'm going to show you a different system. Now in this one we're just going to do a flat betting system. So just to show you the exact same things, it's a $2,400 risk over the same period. It earns pretty much the same thing, but you'll see here with a loss it's slightly less aggressive because we're consistently betting $187. Throw in another loss, it's slightly less again, but it still eats a huge chunk into our bankroll. And if we don't have a loss recovery strategy, then you may well be happy to continue to do so. Here's one last system. This is where we bet to receive a similar amount each day. So every time we place a bet, the bet stake fluctuates, and I don't need to go into the math again and adjust everything, but if you lose, obviously depending on what day you lose and what you've staked, would wipe off your bankrolls. So you can see that they're all pretty similar. Same risks, had similar returns and similar losses. And it's about that loss management that most people forget to look at. They just go straight onto either a pro bet, very, very aggressive, or a flat bet and do nothing, and therefore that creates that bankroll bounce or a lot of fear and a lot of pressure and psychological pressure on the capper if their system includes an ABC betting. So I've devised a very, very complex but very, very easy to use process. It's an amazingly complex system, and I'm going to share it with you now so that you never have another losing month.
So get your calculators out and your laptops out, because I'm going to share with you the formula so that you can actually apply this to your own business. You can see the intricate detail that I'm now disclosing for the first time, that you can simply plug in to your computer that calculates what you need to place on your next bet following a loss. Furthermore, it calibrates your return of investment and your bankroll so that you're always into a positive rather than in a negative. So you're never doing a bankroll bounce. And what it shows you is that based on your lack of money management and your lack of having a loss recovery strategy in place, your next bet needs to be $1 million. Hopefully you've twigged that there is no complex magical formula. I mentioned before that I thought that money management is the second most important aspect of sports betting. The most important being picking winners. If you could pick a winner every single time, then you wouldn't need money management so much, and you definitely wouldn't need loss recovery. But we know that that's pretty much impossible to do. So I have devised a very simplistic process to mitigate some of the risk, but also to recover your losses. So we established earlier that we need a money management program for placing bets, and I showed you some examples, and that was based around a low risk calculated parlay system. There are obviously many other types of systems, and we also need a money management system for loss recovery. So what happens when we have a loss? So we have three options. Option one is to do nothing. There is nothing wrong with flat betting if your odds are good enough, if they're strong enough. So if you're picking underdogs, or if you're taking the spread or the money line, then flat betting is fine. As long as your win rate's over around about 55 to 65%, you can still be in profit flat betting. Option two is to pro bet, to progressive bet and aggressively progress. So we see here $100 bet. If it loses, you then the next day you do a $200 bet. You might add a little bit more because of the juice and the odds. The next day, if that loses, you go to a C bet, and that's $400. You can see it's starting to get a little bit pressurized here. And then a D bet, which you really should have a bankroll to manage a D bet, because ABC losses happen frequently. I would say you should be able to build into your cash flow and your management and your money management system that you're going to have 12 per year. So one a month ABC will lose. Now hopefully not, hopefully it's only 6 or 5, but it does happen, and it does happen a lot. And as it builds up, because of the psychology, you overanalyze stuff, you start doubting things, or the capper starts doubting his own system. He starts to relook, puts new filters in, and you end up going to a C bet and even a D bet. So I highly recommend that if you are going down that route, and I did this, I moved away from it because I just didn't like the intensity. Make sure that you have the ability and the balls to go to a D bet. If you've got a low risk calculated parlay where the odds are significantly lower, and this is what I use, you're looking at, just to recover, you're looking at you times it by 3 really. You really need to go from a $100 bet to a $300 bet to a $900 bet, $2,700 bet, and believe me, they are painful nights, unless of course you're a high roller or you're used to it, which it's not my game. So now let's look at option 3, and this is a system that I use. I wouldn't say that I've necessarily created it, but I've just taken the logic from running my own business and running a normal business. And on a business day, when you have a loss, you don't try and aggressively recoup any losses the following day. So if I'm running a cafe and I have to throw out all my stock, sandwiches, etc., because I didn't sell enough, I don't try and double my profit the next day just to make up for the actual loss I had the previous day. No, I don't. I actually put a target into place, and I try and get that back over a period of time. And that's all I'm doing here. I'm setting the time frame to the end of the month. We need to set a time frame, otherwise we get what's known as bankroll drift, and those losses actually just keep pushing out and pushing out and pushing out. And therefore I think the simplest way for me to be able to do it, and you choose your own time frame, is to use the end of the month. So what I do is I take the loss, I calculate what the gross amount I would need to place as a bet to achieve that loss if it was in one single bet. So in my low odds calculated parlay, I've worked out that on average, and I don't need to go into absolute minute detail, I just want to take an average of the system, what I currently get. The odds are 1.45, so I know that if I wanted to recover my loss in one single go, I need to place a bet of $222 to get my $100 loss back. So my average daily bet, let's say, is $100, and you can change this, it could be $10, doesn't really matter, it could be $15, but let's say for simplicity, $100. So using these odds, and we could change the odds, I know that if I wanted to recover it in one single go, I need to place a bet for $222 because the odds are pretty low. The risk is low, but the odds are low as well. So therefore, I calculate based on the day that I lose, how much of this stake needs to be added to the remaining days of the month. So I know that I need to place a bet for $222, and let's say I lose on day 1 of the month. Well, I've got plenty of time to recover the loss, so I can simply add, instead of me placing $100 bets for the rest of the month, I place $107.41 bets. If it was on day 2 that I lost, the following day it would be $7.66. If it was on day 4, and it just simply increases all the time. So let's say on day 15 I lose my bet. On day 16, and for the remainder of the month, I need to place an extra $13.89. So instead of me placing a $100 bet, I would have to increase it to $113.89 for the remainder of the month. And you can see the closer you get to the end of the month, the more aggressive it becomes, but it's still nothing like an A, B, C or a D bet. The maximum exposure you have would be a simple 1-day recovery, and you may choose to push it out to the following month. Just be careful not to push too many out. So if, for example, that was my first loss of the month, and then 2 days later I had another loss, so I would calculate I needed to do another 100. So what would I need to do? I would need to add 15. So let's say 2 days later I had the loss, I win, then lose. So the next day I would need to add another 17. So it would be that plus that. And we would see that my bet for the remainder of the month would now need to be that, to ensure that I recouped my loss. And that is the simple process. You can set the time frame less. The problem I had with setting the time frame, for argument's sake, to 10 days was the fact that we would have lots and lots of overlapping losses. So let's say that was a 10-day recovery program, and we could, let's highlight that, and then there's another one here, we could highlight that one, and then there was another one here, we'd highlight that, and we would simply it just got too complicated. There was nothing wrong with that process. It just depends on how easy you like to keep it. I like to keep it fairly simple. And then there'd be crossing over in months. You can imagine that it's at the end of the month and it's lapping over. It's my way of just keeping it simple. The idea is to spread the loss recovery over a greater period of time, and you're putting in far less pressure on yourself, but you're still knowing that as you continue in these great systems and these great programs, that you are going to get that loss back. So you're not just bouncing up and down with your loss program. That is the way I've managed to go 2 years without losing a single month. I did start off on ABC betting, and then I moved on to this because when I got to a D bet it became just too intense. I hope that has helped give you an insight into my business, how I operate, and if you utilize anything like this, it will enable you to recover your losses and continue to profit without getting into too much of the psychology of seeing that your bankroll is bouncing up and down. I look forward to the next video in the future, but I've